What I'm going to talk about today is something I call the pseudonymous economy. Why should we want it and how do we build it? And very importantly, I think the pseudonymous economy is essentially the foundation for a sort of muscular classical liberalism that is actually capable of standing up in today's information environment rather than make what I would consider sort of naive appeals to people to look past gender or look past race or look past this or look past that, or to not cancel or to not discriminate online. Instead, we make it impossible for people to do that by taking away that kind of information entirely with realistic AI avatars and with fully functional pseudonyms. I gave this talk actually 18 months ago, like a V1 of it. And there were certain things I speculated on that I said, were coming and I didn't know when, but they were going to come. And now they're here, important pieces, not just the remote economy, which obviously has accelerated a lot post-COVID, but also things like AI avatars, Epic's MetaHuman, which I'm going to show off, and then BitClout, which is actually a very important thing, which is a decentralized Twitter, which is something I had sort of speculated on, that if it existed, then we could build these subroutines, but now it exists and it's been open source as of just a few days ago. And so a lot of this stuff is even more relevant than it was, I think, 18 months ago. So without further ado, let me jump in. And please stop me anytime if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. And Jerry, just gesticulate if my audio cuts out or something like that. So, because I can see you. All right, great. So what is pseudonymity? Why pseudonymous economy? How might it work? And how could we build it? So first, very importantly, pseudonymity is not anonymity. Let's distinguish real names, pseudonyms, and anonyms, right? Real name, Mark Zuckerberg. A pseudonym is a persistent name like Sad Capitals fan or Comfortably Smug. And an anonym is like a 4chan anon, where there's no tracing across interactions. A pseudonym, crucially, can have reputation, it can have metadata associated with it. An anon is not persistent at all. And so 4chan is anonymous, but Reddit and some of Twitter is pseudonymous. Facebook historically used to be entirely a quote real name. And the pseudonymous economy is really about pseudonyms, not anonyms, so they're often conflated. And as I'll get to, pseudonyms are actually not just as important as decentralization, they're actually a form of decentralization itself, because another name for a real name is a fiat name or a legal name or a state name or a social security name, because it's an official name registered with the state. Whereas a pseudonym is something that you register on your own on any computer network or just make it up yourself. So it's a decentralized name as opposed to a centralized name. So that's why I say pseudonymity is as important as decentralization. Satoshi's pseudonymity was as important as Bitcoin's decentralization, because here's the Bitcoin network, here's the person. They couldn't, shut down any individual node in the network to shut the whole thing down, but they also couldn't go and find the person. They were, pseudonymous. They couldn't map of the billions of humans. They couldn't find the one that it maps to shut that person down either. They couldn't play either the man or the ball. So it was as important as decentralization, and it's underappreciated in my view and under-theorized, and it's also under-advocated. And I think that through a combination of both technical and cultural/legal/social changes, we can essentially arrive at a new equilibrium, a post-internet equilibrium, where we're not using real names or legal names or fiat names for the internet, but mainly pseudonyms, as I'll get to. So a critical concept is that pseudonymity is a continuum. So there's this concept of 33 bits, which is by my, kind of cognate or evil twin, Arvind Narayanan, very smart guy at Princeton, who is as intent on sort of de-anonymization and state control as I am on decentralization and pseudonymity. But, to him, he's got this concept of 33 bits, which basically says, there's about 7.5 billion people in the world, which means that 33 independent bits of information would allow you to index 8.6 billion people. Therefore, with 33 independent bits of information, you could identify any person in the world, right? Now, just to make that more clear, with Twitter MAUs, there's 330 million of them, so it's about 28 bits of information. Verifieds, there's 330,000, so it's 18 bits of information. So essentially, a bit of information is like, are you male or female, right? roughly that gives you one bit of information worldwide. Then another bit of information might be, okay, if male or female, then divide that further in half and then in half again, right? So getting an independent bit of information is not that easy to get, but this is a way to quantify your degree of anonymity or pseudonymity, right? Now, the reason this is important, by the way, is now you realize, wait, I can be, 1 out of 1,000 people. They might have narrowed it down to a set of 1,000 people. So I'm not completely pseudonymous, but I'm also not trackable. 1,000 people is sort of too many to throw in jail, for anybody other than, let's say, the Chinese. And so degrees of pseudonymity are important. You don't necessarily need to be 100% pseudonymous, like 33 bits of pseudonymity. You might be able to get by with 20 or 25 or 10 for different applications. Okay. Now, pseudonymity is actually already mainstream. It's one of the most under-discussed things, but there's something like 400 million Reddit users, actually 330 million as of 2018, but 400 million as of today. Mitt Romney used a pseudonym. James Comey used a pseudonym. So those are like guys who are in their 60s and 70s, but also kids, Gen Z kids are using pseudonyms, the Finstas and Rinstas. The Finsta, it's like a fake account to reveal your true self, your real self. The Rinsta is a real name Instagram to be your fake self. So on a real name Instagram, you're in your Sunday best and you're looking all, clean and so on. And on the Finsta, it's under a search-resistant identity, and the kid is looking, more realistic. They're with their friends doing drugs or whatever it is the kids do these days. And so the point is that pseudonymity is already actually mainstream. Hundreds of millions of people have persistent pseudonyms. It goes from the most junior to the most senior levels of society, yet it's under discussed. Pseudonymity is, I believe, where society is going. If you look at, for example, the tooling in Gmail, in Twitter, many major web applications have multiple account support. This was initially developed in order for people to be able to run both their personal account and a corporate account, but now it's something where people routinely split personal accounts, work accounts, pseudonyms, this account, that account. So it's being driven technologically, but it's also driven actually by policy. As you may know, like there's many job interview questions that are illegal. You can't ask somebody's country of national origin or about their disability status, their religion, their gender. Those are all questions you can't ask in a job interview. And there's other things like ban the box and so on. So hiring practices are moving in the direction of only asking work-related questions. And a third driver of this is social mob attacks, cancellation, discrimination, all this type of stuff that happens on social media. And then, of course, remote and crypto, as I'll get to, are also driving pseudonymity. So this is actually where society is going. And so you might say, okay, well, then why a pseudonymous economy, though, right? So the key concept is that pseudonymity allows freedom after speech, right? So, this is an old joke from Yakov Smirnov, right? In Soviet Russia, we too have freedom of speech, but in America, you have freedom after speech, right? And that's actually not that funny a joke anymore. That's from the 80s. Haha, after I say something, I'm still around. Actually, well, you might get mobbed on social media. This, by the way, I think is why people actually rationally, had a fear of stage fright, like why they were afraid of public speaking. Because if you do say the wrong thing in front of a crowd, you might actually get mobbed and torn limb from limb. So a lot of people actually are rationally afraid of speaking in front of large crowds. And Twitter has sort of shown that that fear is not completely unfounded. And so social media mobs are now routine. Everybody's a journalist, everybody's a public figure. Everybody can go after anybody. And the thing about this is, negative press of this kind is basically an attack on your social network. When, here's your friends over here, just in this example, the Wall Street Journal, goes to all the red nodes and says that this person is now bad. And their social network supply chain is then disrupted because what happens is after that attack, this guy breaks the connection, he quits, this guy pulls the investment, and she goes to the minimum contractually obligated, right? She still stays, with this person's company, let's say, but goes to the minimum contractually obligated. These two people don't care. They might even pull closer. But, the point is that when this kind of thing happens, when someone puts in a hit on your real name like this, it can actually cause you real damage. And this is now true not just for the journal, but for anybody. However, if they just go and denounce a pseudonym, now the man walks unscathed, right? These people don't get the software update pushed to them. They don't know that this person is actually this evil person over here. And so you've got yourself protected, right? And in this fashion, like if you saw the episode with Antonio Garcia Martinez recently, you might write under this pseudonym and you work under this one, and you air gap your personas. You have your earning name and your writing name and your legal name. And you might have 3 or you might have 50 of these names, and you kind of separate them out, just like you have a credit card and you have a bank account and you have this and you have that, right? And so what this does is basically it avoids putting all your eggs in one basket. A very important concept is if your bank account is your stored wealth, your real name is your stored reputation. You go and you build up your bank account balance over time. Only you can debit from your bank account, but you build up your real name over time. And what happens is basically that anybody can debit from your reputation, right? So your real name accumulates followers, it accumulates other kinds of backlinks and so on over time, but anybody can debit from it in a way they cannot debit from a bank account. And so once you conceptualize this like a stored reputation in your real name, you want to have many different pseudonyms and have some reputation in each of them to avoid a kind of a catastrophic cancellation loss. Now, that's what I mean, right? Like basically you have to put in a PIN and so on to be able to debit, but a social media mob can just debit your real name's reputation. So your bank account balance can be debited, but your reputation, or bank account balance can only be debited by you, but your reputation can be debited by others. So this is this concept of separating out your earning, your speaking, and your real names. You earn under this name and you earn Zcash. You speak under Comfortably Smug, say, and your real name is what you put on official forms. It's when you're rendering unto Caesar, you put that on the form. And this is the concept of basically every problem in computer science being solved with another little indirection, like AWS bastions or HD wallets. If you're familiar with that, we might even use HD wallets to implement it. Now, as I mentioned, I gave this talk first about 18 months ago, and technology has advanced since then. Let me see if I can play this video, if this works here. Tell me if you hear the audio here, or you might just see the video. Okay. Do you guys hear that?
We don't hear the audio.
Okay. Well, so
high fidelity digital characters
No,
created by you, the user, on our new content creation platform, MetaHuman Creator. I am fully rigged, ready for animation and motion capture, allowing you to work in context. With everything running live in Unreal Engine, my motion works seamlessly
on other characters. I have 8 levels of detail and have been tested on a wide range of hardware platforms, from feature film to mobile. If you're interested in learning about my animation rig or high fidelity declamations, built on Control Rig, the new strand-based hair system via the Groom component, or how everything is tied together and animated in Sequencer, then have a look under the hood in this project. This is just a glimpse of things to come.
Okay, so that was pretty impressive. Okay, that's MetaHuman, that's 2021. And so Zoom today, we're using our, faces here, right? But, you have to put on makeup, you have to shave, you have to get dressed, you have to do all these things. I think pretty soon what's going to happen is, and this already happened really for your kids, if you have kids, Fortnite or something like that. They spend their money not on clothes as much, but on virtual clothes, right? Accessories for the virtual world. Those will become NFTs. And by 2030, if not sooner, you may not use your real face, voice, or even language or accent online. You might be able to speak in Chinese and so on and so forth. And rather than have us all be here just sort of looking at the camera, we're either in VR or we're using AI avatars for all of our remote interactions. And the thing that's happened, by the way, over the last year, most people don't realize this, but the economy flipped, and most of the economy is now remote. That is to say, big transactions, big deals, venture capital investments, acquisitions, large enterprise sales, those can all now happen online. They don't have to be in person anymore. And therefore, the only big deals that I do, or rather the only deals I do in person, are buying coffee. And even that's electronic, because that's through Apple Pay or something like that. So over the last year, that flipped. That's an underappreciated thing. It's not just that remote deals can get done that are large, it's that the biggest bits of society can now get done via AI avatars and over remote connection. Okay, so the other piece, in addition to AI avatars, are crypto domain names. I mentioned this before, but basically real names weren't built for the internet. They reveal both too much and too little. too much because 3 billion people can now stalk you. They can punch your name into not just a search engine, but into all these various databases, all these data brokers, and so on. But they also reveal too little because, like a search engine actually is kind of a sucky way to look up a text string. If you've got, let's say Larry White is a pretty common name. There might be 20 other people named Larry White. And what you actually want is larrywhite17.eth, which will let you do domain resolution, which is actually the way that we look up names on computer networks. Domain names are unambiguous. LarryWhite.com is unambiguous. And larrywhite.eth or larrywhite17.eth would be unambiguous, where you could attach metadata to it. And essentially ENS is, or something like it, like a ZNS, like a zero knowledge version that has more privacy. But ENS collapses concepts from usernames, domain names, real names, payment handles, login mechanisms, and more into just one thing. And probably in the not too distant future, I'm just going to be going by balajis.eth everywhere, like an adult name change. And I think that's one of the things that we want to make possible legally, is to make it very easy to change your name to a domain name. Like soldierboytellhim.com, if you guys remember him, the rapper, was actually, I think, a pioneer. Because if the only thing people know about you is jerrybrito.com or jimpearson.eth, that actually gives them a lot of information. They can pay you with that. They can look up your website with that. They can look up maybe files associated with you that you've made public with that. They can send you encrypted messages. They know that if you want to, you can reveal like what jobs you've worked at that name and so on and so forth, because your transaction history is there, what tasks you've completed, what crypto you hold, like you're a Bitcoiner or an Ethereum or what have you. Actually, it collapses lots and lots of things into one thing that's just like a text string, because it's very memorable. You can remember it. Domain names are meant to be remembered, but crypto domain names are better than real names because they reveal exactly what you want to reveal and no more. People can't just stalk you with it. They can't find out your location. They can't find out anything else other than that you've chosen to associate with that crypto domain name. So it's not just the pseudonymous economy, it's also the Ethereum pseudonym. Like, what pseudonym should you choose? Not Farfig Newton 23, not just some random Reddit username, but a crypto domain name, I think, is going to be what we're going to converge on in terms of a pseudonym. So what's funny here, by the way, is it sounds like a caricature, but blockchain and AI, right? Crypto domain names and AI avatars really are changing everything, and they're changing the fundamental way we represent ourselves online. Now, there's one problem, though, which is, and I'll discuss this for a little bit and then get into questions. Basically, how do you boot up a new pseudonym efficiently? And that's a big part of building the pseudonymous economy. Essentially, we know that we can move wealth to a pseudonym with something like Zcash. Can we transfer reputation to a pseudonym as well, right? And if so, we could one-click set up a new pseudonym. Now, let's take the special case of Twitter. We can now decentralize much of the Twitter back into BitClout, newly open source, so this is more feasible. Here's a real name account. Here's a pseudonymous account, right? Right now, there's only two choices, 100, 0, or 0, 100. Either you have all of your followers and you have no pseudonymity in bits. Remember the 33 bits thing. Or you have a new pseudonym where you just set it up that has 0 followers, but you have 100% pseudonymity. You're just 1 out of 300 million Twitter users. The interesting question is whether, now that we've expressed this quantitatively, whether there's some intermediate, or there's some way to trade off some of the followers while retaining some of the pseudonymity, such that you don't have the cold start problem with a new pseudonym, that it retains some of the distribution. And so, again, as I mentioned, 33 bits, one of the key concepts is that there's actually a continuum here. You can be slightly less than 100% pseudonymous relative to the other 300 million Twitter users, while still preserving much of the practical aspects of pseudonymity. And so, the technical measures, I'm not sure exactly how much math, the audience knows here, but there's some constructions which I'll just zip through quickly. But basically, if you start thinking about, the adjacency matrix of who follows who, one issue is that if you naively copied over that entire adjacency matrix to a new pseudonym, that pattern is replicated, and anybody can tell if they analyze the graph matrix that this pseudonym is the same as this person. It's just porting over the followers doesn't work in a naive way, basically, because you're the only one who has this exact pattern of who follows you. So that doesn't work. But instead, what you can do is you can transfer attestations rather than transferring everything. So, there's things the platform has put in place, like your blue check. There's things that the user has self-declared, like their name or their location. And there's things that other people have done, like following you. So it's like kind of platform level, first party and third party, though we don't normally disaggregate it that way. And what we can do is use, various kinds of zero knowledge constructions to move over those things that are not simply self-attestations, but that are either platform level or follower level. And so you can move over the fact that, oh, this user is verified. So then with a zero knowledge attestation, you can say that that pseudonym is also verified. So now you moved over verification effectively to the pseudonym. It's like transferring Zcash, except you're transferring Z verification, right? You can apply this to other kinds of things as well. This is just, like one very well-known person with a real name, so 0 bits of anonymity. This is a pure pseudonym that has nothing associated with it, which has, 1 out of 333 million MEUs, so 28.3 bits of anonymity. Porting over the verification via attestation does reduce pseudonymity because there's 330,000 verifieds, but it retains 18.3 bits. And so you spent 10 bits of anonymity to port verification over to this profile. Now, that's actually good because, verification is a sign of notability. This is now much more valuable to follow a pseudonym than just some random one, right? It's a blue check pseudonym, which seems like a contradiction in terms. And what you can do is essentially have something where you port over other attestations, like more than 100K followers or followed by Jack and so on and so forth. And every such attestation that you port over drops some degree of pseudonymity, but it will potentially increase your distribution. Now, how is it increase the distribution? How do we ensure that folks still follow? Well, there's various constructions. One version is something like auto follow, where people set up a flag which says, okay, will you auto follow somebody if they're verified, auto follow if they've got greater than 10,000 followers, auto follow if Jack follows, there's certain notability criteria. And so then your pseudonym gets auto followed by these people because, if you have a verification flag, they're going to follow you, right? So you don't move over all of the followers, but you move over those that have that auto follow flag set up, okay? This is one approach. There are others, but the general concept now is you can have a trade-off here where you sacrifice some pseudonymity and retain some distribution in return. So let's say 150,000 have auto follow for verification on. As I said, there's other ways of doing this, but the critical concept is this chart where you start thinking, how do I boot up a pseudonym, not just in terms of Zcash and in terms of wealth, but in terms of reputation. As I said, a lot of this is now more feasible now that BitCloud is out, now that MetaHuman is out, zero knowledge has advanced, a lot of stuff has advanced for the last 18 months. And so we can, once we have this trade-off over here, we can start thinking of pseudonyms as becoming more useful because you just boot them up and have them have some of your previous profile, getting some value here. So you can move now wealth and reputation to a pseudonym. And this allows people to shield themselves against attack by separating their earning, speaking, and real names, but moving assets back and forth between them in privacy-preserving ways. And you can do simulations, by the way, to say, hey, if I were to move this asset, how much pseudonymity do I give up? Okay, now I'm only one of 50 people. That might be too little. Somebody could guess who I am. Okay, I'm not going to do it, right? So you can do a predictive reduction in pseudonymity. You basically quantify your reduction in privacy. So next steps, crypto domain names, AI avatars, zero knowledge of all advanced. BitCloud is now live, so we can implement there. Just in summary, what is pseudonymity? It's something in between real names and anonyms. It's actually very popular. Why a pseudonymous economy? Because it prevents both discrimination and cancellation. How might it work? Separate out your earning, speaking, and real names. How might we build it? Move anonymity, or rather move reputation to a pseudonym while sacrificing some pseudonymity, but not all. And maybe build into something like BitCloud, which is actually now the decentralized Twitter, open source Twitter that we wanted for a long time. So thank you very much. And that's my BitCloud over there. Go sign up on that. It's pretty cool.